Hello, everyone, and welcome to day three of our 2021 Pre-PDAC Mining Showcase. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce the president and CEO and a good friend of mine, Steve Cope of Silver Viper Minerals, to go through their project in Mexico. The project had some significant results recently, and it's my opinion that those results came into sort of a bit of a headwind in metals, but it should be a very good opportunity for those individuals that want to potentially take a position here. So I'll let Steve tell you the reasons why. Over to you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Seb, and thanks everyone for taking time out of their day to listen to the Silver Viper story. Like Seb said, it's a very exciting time for us as a company, putting out one of the best drill holes that we've seen in the sector in the last few years. And we'll dive into a little further into the presentation. But I think it's a very exciting story and a great opportunity for everyone to get a position or to grow an already existing position. I will be making some forward-looking statements there. I probably already made one, so, but we'll make some more throughout the presentation. As far as the project's located in eastern Sonora in Mexico, up in the Sierra Madre. When you're looking at investing in a precious metals, junior explorer, I think we check off every box. We've got a high quality asset, lots of potential, and a strong management and shareholder group behind it. Like I said, the asset's the La Virginia Gold Project. It was Minefinder's #1 exploration project when they were bought by Pan American Silver for $1.5 billion. What Minefinders had done is they were operating at the Dolores mine, which sits 100 km south just across the border into Chihuahua. And they flew the whole mountain range looking for another Dolores and settled on La Virginia being that lookalike. They spent over $10 million on the project, did over 50,000 meters of drilling at the point they were bought by Pan American Silver. When that happened, metals prices fell off. Pan Am doesn't do a lot of grassroots exploration in general anyway, so the project got sat on the shelf until we got involved in 2018. We made an early discovery at the El Ruby area at the end of our first phase of drilling, and since then that zone has been where we're completely focused and contained, El Ruby's where we just hit our spectacular results that were released earlier this week. We can't say enough good things about El Ruby. We've been looking at it as a model of both open pit and then going underground on the high grade structure separate from that. And hole 289, which was the highlight of that last intercept, showed both of those potentials. We had over 130 meters of, excellent open pit heap leachable grade. And then, there was a 1.5 meter component within a 19.3 meter that ran 252 grams gold and over 3,900 grams silver. It was just, a spectacular hole. We got some attention the first couple of days, but we were, like Seb said, we were running into quite the headwind of metals prices and some existing holders that put a lot of pressure on the stock. And now I think we're trading back down right around where we halted it prior to that spectacular news. So again, very good opportunity. But it doesn't end there for our company. We'll have ongoing assays that, we're going to follow up on that section. We're going to have results, I think, even maybe as early as next week on the hole that was drilled to the south of this that we drilled to get it included in a resource. And we'll be putting out a maiden resource, hopefully by the end of the month here, that's going to include both the hole 289 and hole 290, which we still don't have the results back for. And then we're cutting off the data. We still expect the preliminary results for that resource by the end of the month. Strong management. We've got 4 senior geologists in our group with over 150 years combined experience. Very typical of the Belcara group. Management owns over 20% of all 3 stocks. We're active in the market. We like to participate on placements. We think the best place to invest our money is in ourselves. Very good institutional ownership. As of last financing, we had about 20 funds that own the stock, and still a very low share count with only 81 million shares outstanding. Here you can see the 2 different colors for the claims packages. The claims in red are what we acquired from Pan American for a 2% NSR, and we own those 100% outright now. That also gave us ownership of all the historic data and physical core, which is stored in Hermosillo. The claims in blue, which is where the majority of the historic work was, well, all of the historic work was done, and even some of our work. That you can see that back-end loaded option agreement there of note, that final payment, half of that can be paid in shares. But it was an option agreement that was designed to let us put the money in the ground where it belongs, and it was very favorable terms, and I certainly has already warranted those types of payments given the success we've had. There are some old underground workings in the historic area of the project here. Top left is the narrower La Virginia vein. The one with the rock hammer is in Com Virginia, and that's about a 20-meter wide zone there. Las Huates is similar. It's to Virginia, maybe slightly narrower, but Virginia and Las Huates are where the bulk of the historic ounces will come from. Again, this never had a resource put on it. So we'll be finally getting some value in this maiden resource for all that work that was done in that historic area. Where our discovery was made at El Ruby sits about 4 to 5 kilometers north of that historic area. And as we've moved north on the project, we've seen mineralization, we're entering a higher heat environment. We're seeing, multiple phases of mineralization in our core. It's just the grade's gone up, the widths are getting better as we go to depth. It's, it's a developing story and a very exciting story right now, especially in the El Ruby area. One of the reasons we were able to get into El Ruby is we were using the MAM portable rigs. When Mine Finders and Pan Am were on it, they were using large track mounted rigs. They were bulldozing in roads. It was very expensive exploration. With the MAM portable rigs, we're environmentally permitted to work anywhere on the project. If you're looking at the picture there, we reuse all the lumber on the next pads after we're done drilling there. We throw down some grass seed and all that's left is, a drill collar, and you can barely tell that we're there. Semernet loves us for that. We use mules to carry the core in and out from the rig and bring in the fuel. We've got water year round. There's also a power line corridor that just recently goes right through the middle of our project that connects the town of Nacorichico to the next town down the road of Mesa Tres Rios. So infrastructure, even though we're up in the Sierra Madres, is very good. But it's, it was to our benefit that we were the ones willing to go in there and do the work and map and sample this portion of the project, which, like I said, they didn't even do that. There was no mapping or sampling done on the northern half of the project in the past. So that's why we got excited, as we knew we were going to have a chance to come in here and make discoveries above and beyond what Mine Finders had already done. Won't spend too much time on this slide. You can see some of the high grades across, our El Ruby structure here, and some of the stringer structures that are off of it. 289, you can see down there at the bottom, obviously has both that long broad grade of 0.69 gold with 18 silver, and then obviously the spectacular half meter that ran over, which is separate from that 130 meters that ran 10,681 silver and 738 gold that was on that last release for over 62,000 silver equivalent using 70 to 1. And on top of that, which isn't in that equivalent, it had combined 14% lead and zinc. So that was, a spectacular sample, but more importantly, it sat in a 19.3 meter wide zone. And then we also had the broad low grade above that was a separate zone. Last year, one of our kind of big discoveries that was a bit of a game changer and really started to show that open pit potential was hole 245. Since then, we followed up. Hole 284 was in this release and got lost and ignored, but again, it hit broad, long, over 100 meters of mineralization right at surface, further, enhancing the idea of an open pit. And then down deeper in 289, we hit that broad, long mineralized zone of 130 meters. And then right after it, we had the 19.3 meters. That was the widest and deepest and highest grade intercept to date on the main El Ruby structure. This is just some core. When we're here, we're not in a vein per se. We have stockwork veining, but our zone itself is a breccia zone, and where we get these breccias, that tends to be where we get the highest grades on the main El Ruby structure. And you can see, some of the stockwork veining, but mineralization, sometimes there's some mineralization in the stockwork veining, but typically it's evolved with the breccias, and both in the low grade zone here, which was hole 245, and then as we go deeper, and you can see a bit of core here from that recent intercept on hole 289. You can see some of the sulfides, but again, it's a breccia zone. It's not a vein that's carrying and running these grades. Here's the section that includes hole 289. Again, you can see the 19.3 meter zone down right at the bottom of the hole there. We're moving the rig back to follow up on that hole. We're going to scissor it back and try and expand it above the structure. And so it'll be, these boxes are 100-meter boxes. So we'll try and hit it about 50 meters above it, punch through and come this way. And then we'll probably also we're going to cut underneath it and try and add to the depth component of it again as well. One of the things that really intrigued us with that, because it hasn't been anywhere else on the project, was the base metals and the idea that, are we getting close to a feeder source for some of this ruby mineralization? Seeing those widths and those grades, is this an area where the stringer zones are coming together into a main structure? And that theory certainly is warranted to follow up on this section, and I believe they're building the pads right now to follow up on that hole. one of the interesting things that we had last year is we did some geophysics, and all of our anomalies lined up right on the edge of this kind of arrowhead shaped anomaly that we're interpreting as a buried intrusion. We've put some holes into the northern anomaly, Macho Libre and El Molino. They all came back and had some mineralization. It wasn't at the same widths and grades that we saw at El Ruby, but there's certainly still lots of potential in those areas, and I think it'll just be a matter of vectoring in on where in the system in those areas that we can vector in on those best grades, whether it's going deeper. We certainly see that Macho Libre that we were high in the system. So there'll be some follow-up work done on those in this phase of drilling that we resumed on the back end of Christmas. But right now we're focused on that El Ruby in that new zone. In the last couple of weeks, the team with further geochem programs identified that Leucomena anomaly. Very interesting gold and silver samples that were taken up there, and that one will probably see the first work of any of our anomalies this year. But we are very excited about that potential of that new zone as well. As far as our 2021 exploration plans, same as last year to start with. We announced a 5,000 meter program last year and did well over 20,000 meters. We'll just continue to drill in success. I could see upping and adding rigs later in the year on the back end of another financing whenever we decide to do that. But for the time being, we're focused on El Ruby. We're continuing to drill there. We're going to get the resource out, by the end of the month and see where we're at on the back end of that resource. But all the work this year will be to continue growing and expanding on the resource in the El Ruby area of the project, and then following up on some different anomalies, trying to make new discoveries. We did some met work last year. It shows that the rock leaches very well across all the gold ranges, 90 to 95%. Silver even leached, better than expected, 62 to 76%. And we're doing some follow-up met work on that front to show that we can recover the high-grade silver through a different method than leaching. We don't expect any problems there. This is a very traditional Mexican epithermal system. Our host mineralization is acanthite. We see gold and silver alloyed as electrum. We don't have anything kind of nasty in the system. So we don't expect any issues on that front. We'd like to show kind of high 80s into the 90s, silver recoveries for the high grade silver. Our group is the Belcara Group. We have 3 public companies under our management. Orex Minerals in Durango, Mexico, and Barceli Minerals are the other 2 companies within the group. And Barceli is in northern Sweden in a joint venture with Agnico Eagle. That's what allows us to afford to have those geologists that we referenced earlier. We're able to share our G&A costs across the company, so our burn rate will be lower per company than single asset, single company groups. But having that combined level of experience that we have with our geology team is invaluable. They look at all the projects, they bounce ideas off each other. We get, thousands of property submissions a year because of all the connections they have in the industry. I would put our team up against anyone. And, our last big success that shows our group's model was Orco Silver. And we sold that in a bidding war between Coeur and First Majestic for over 350 million US. And that was a project we put the first drill hole into and grew it to over 270 million ounces of silver. The share price, and obviously that's the one that's been bugging us on the back end of some world-class news. I think on the second day it got as high as 71 cents. We halted it at 52 cents prior to the news, and now we're back down at that 52, 50 cent range. Obviously a lot of that has to do with metals prices, but we've also had some bigger holders of the shares, I guess, leaning on the stock. We don't know who it is, but it's created an opportunity for people to build a position, and on the back end of some world-class exciting news. You can reach out to Red Cloud for their report. We should change that now, I guess, because Derek's moved into corporate finance, but Dave Talbot, I believe, put out a note on the company, and so you could reach out and ask them for a copy of that report. In summary, we have a high quality asset. We're in a mining friendly jurisdiction. Sonora is the #1 gold producing state in Mexico and high up on the silver list as well. Strong management and technical team behind the project, lots of potential, strong shareholder support, and a healthy treasury. With that, I think we can wrap it up and open it up for questions.
Thanks very much, Steve. That's great. If you can go back to the slide on the current drilling. The question that I have coming in here is, can you let us know what the cutoff will be for for drilling? Just reiterate what the cutoff will be for drilling before the resource comes out.
Yeah, I mean, the cutoff's going to be hole 290, which was drilled south of 289. It was what we did is we did the wireframes, saw that there was a gap after we did the wireframes at the completion of last year's drilling. There was a gap here in the southern portion of Ruby, so that's why we drilled 289 and 290 where they were. So we have 289, you can see on this image here at the bottom, ripping across. 290 is drilled 50 meters south and a bit lower in the zone in the system. So it'll be included, and then we're going to cut off data from there for the resource. I think it's about 20 or 30 meters lower in elevation than hole 289 and 50 meters to the south. And I think you'll actually see a release on that hole probably in the next week or the week after.
And then a follow-on question to that, can you give us the time frame of the maiden resource? When do you expect to put out that resource?
We're still targeting having it out by the end of March. Obviously, I think Velia, who's our in-house database manager and does all the wireframes, has redone the wireframes about 6 or 7 times every time we get these better new results in. She's expanding the wireframes, which bodes well, obviously, for increasing the ounces that'll be in the resource. But this is the final time on 290. It's the final time she's going to update the wireframes. They'll go off to the independent, I say on this weekend or early next week, and then we expect within kind of a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at most that we would be getting, some preliminary numbers back, and then within 45 days of that, we would file our report.
Okay, and then another question from the individual that asked the first question about the drilling. I noticed that within your last drill hole, you hit approximately 20 meters of 20 grams gold, which is spectacular. Will you be directing more drilling into that area now that you know that exists?
Absolutely, and I think I touched on it, but if I missed it, I apologize. But yeah, the plan right now is coming out, and they're gonna, if you can see the slide, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but above, we're gonna come back from the east and drill that to the west. This is drilled east to west, the hole 289, you can see on the image. We're gonna bring back a scissor hole above that and come in and try and hit that same 19 plus 20 meter wide zone about 50 meters above it. So probably somewhere around where the S or the T or the R is in the structure word on that El Ruby structure slide, coming back across down. And then part of that's also going to serve to prove where the contact is with the rhyolites below that hole. And if we see that there's a lot of room below that hole, we'll probably come back and drill another hole either from the same pad as 289 or step back and add to it on the depth component as well, coming underneath it. But no, we're definitely going to follow up on that section. We want to tighten the spacing there to, for future resources to include more ounces and hopefully hit some other spectacular grade that we can start, including wider into those wireframes.
When you overlay the drilling that you found with these spectacular results and the geophysics that you have, do you see any glaring trends that you can point to target new areas?
Well, I mean, like we said here, that intrusion is certainly, all of the periphery of this intrusion that you see in this image, this large arrowhead shape, is all highly prospective. It looks like there's another intrusion that pops up here to the east, the northeast. There's lots of targets. I mean, it's a very target-rich environment. One of the things that I know the geology team is looking for as another layer above and beyond geophysics is this LiDAR survey. It's finally scheduled, I believe, for the 17th to be flown on the project. And that is just another layer of information that'll give you some of those structures and ideas that'll light up in that detailed topography that I know Dale is looking forward to for exploration, especially north of Ruby, between the Northern Anomaly and El Ruby, and really vectoring in on what's happening. But it's all different layers of information between our geochem program that identified these anomalies beforehand, seeing how they overlap with the geophysics, and then the LiDAR, and between those three, it should really get the guys vectored in on some additional targets as well.
That's good, Steve. I mean, I guess I'll just leave it with this sort of antidote for individuals. When you're looking at drilling and things that should move the market, you usually multiply grams times meters. And if you look at the results from the last press release, and I urge people to go over it in further detail, the results are just absolutely spectacular. And with the market not reacting due to current metal prices and whatnot, I definitely see this as a really, really good buying opportunity for individuals that don't yet have their feet wet with Silver Viper. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you very much, Steve, for your time. We look forward to the next news from Silver Viper.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or we'll take emails, phone calls. We're always available to talk about our exciting story.